First of all, I guess I want to say how appreciative I am of what the AG's done. She's done a lot of work that the Premier never wanted to see happen. Basically, he wanted a review that he could control. So I thank the AG for taking this on. Secondly, the gaps that exist within the Premier's office and the communication, the numerous phone calls, the discrepancies that we've seen in timing between the Chief of Staff's communication and the Premier's communication are very significant, and we'll be addressing those in the coming 2 hours.
Minister Roussel just asked for apology from you.
Well, I expect after the next couple hours he'll be wanting to apologize himself.
Why?
Well, we're going in now to ask more questions, to confirm timelines, and it clearly points out that there's a discrepancy within the Premier's office. There's a discrepancy of the message that's coming from the Premier and from the Chief of Staff, and we'll be focusing on that. And forgive me if I don't necessarily believe what the Premier or Mr. Russo are.
Can you point something specifically?
We will be when I go in, which I need to go now.
Can you do that now, because we won't be inside. We can't be inside with the camera. So can you do that now?
That's right. But you'll be listening. You can follow through that way.
Do you accept her finding that there's no evidence that the Premier himself directly ordered the fast track or requested the fast track?
Well, what she's saying is that the instructions were vague, the communications were vague, and so from that she says I can't make a direct link, I think is how she's putting it. However, what we're seeing is that information that may have not been available to her that basically points out the timing of statements made between the Chief of Staff and the Premier, which are in direct conflict.
You have information that she doesn't have?
Well, I guess I'll ask those questions when we proceed here in the next few minutes.
Last week you said there was clearly a smoking gun here. Has this report changed anything in your view?
Well, I think, the recommendations that the Auditor General's put forward, I mean, we would agree with all of her recommendations. And I think the most relevant of all of that would be in relation the independent agency concept. There's no need for that. That was just a deflection, and there's no need for that. I think the assessment workers in the system, the assessment office, they're the ones that deserve an apology, because they were hung out to dry a few times, and I would say from the Premier's office. And so if there's any apologies to be given, it should be to those people that were working hard to fix all the mistakes that were being driven, and I contest, still driven from the Premier's office.
So just to be clear, you've got some sort of evidence you're going to bring up in there that adds new detail that the Auditor General doesn't have covered in her report?
Well, I don't know that at this point, but I will be asking those questions, and depending on her answers, it may be new information for her.
She's very critical of how Service New Brunswick has been operating. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think following the recommendations, and I guess, thinking that the Board of Directors, as an example, approved, goal was to approve a business case, so let's say $922,000. So there's some questions there about, well, then who approves it further beyond than that? But I think the fact that there wasn't any business case, there wasn't any plan, I mean, that's very valid, and that you can't blame the assessment workers for that. What the things she's making there and pointing out are real concerns with the operation, but that does not detract from the orders given from the Premier's office to fast track the system, and that's going to be my continued focus with the question.